Iron Man was directed by Jon Favreau, and it stars Robert Downey Jr., Gwyneth Paltrow, Terrence Howard, and Jeff Bridges. This film, of course, kickstarted the most successful movie franchise of all time. It would be quite an understatement to say that the MCU changed the movie-making business forever. Though, as of recently, I've been feeling pretty burnt out by the countless amount of formulaic MCU properties. Though, this film reminded me that these movies weren't always overproduced CGI monstrosities. I've always enjoyed this film, but I honestly forgot how grounded this movie is. Yes, this film is ultimately Chapter 1 in a larger, greater cinematic universe, though this film's main objective isn't setting up that universe, it is crafting a compelling and interesting story. And it manages to do that quite well, actually. I might sound like a boomer here, but this film kind of reminded me of a simpler time, where these movies were allowed to go off and do their own thing, and not have to fit into the cookie-cutter mold of the Marvel formula. I know that this film is largely responsible for the creation of the cinematic universe formula, but really this film is able to justify its existence more than that. It's actually a really well-crafted film, and the greater connection to the MCU is honestly just icing on the cake here. People often forget that in the early MCU, especially in Phase 1, these movies felt very different from each other. Yes, a lot of the early MCU movies weren't really that good, but each of them felt different from each other. And when these characters finally cross paths, when they finally came together on screen, it felt deeply rewarding. It was a very rewarding experience, and I feel like that's why the MCU was as successful as it was. Now I feel like that these movies have a very factory-like feel to them. Now they're constantly trying to make connections to each other, and it just doesn't feel as earned as it used to. I think the main reason why this film works, and I know I am not the first person to say this, but it is Robert Downey Jr. as Tony Stark. Millions of people have said this before me, but he is just that good. I do not imagine anyone else even coming close to capturing just the essence of his performance. He is just literally born to play this role. He just captures the energy of Tony Stark to a T. He makes Tony's personality just feel so natural. At the very beginning of this film, his character is a complete douchebag, but his main character arc is, well, becoming less of a douchebag, I guess. And he manages to make that transition, a rather quick transition, mind you, feel so natural. I think I also need to give major credit to this film's script. Like, it's able to go through all these major story beats and major character moments rather quickly, and none of it feels rushed. It feels very natural. And I also think Robert Downey Jr. plays a large part in this. Like, he's able to make this character transformation feel very believable. This film manages to take the task of setting up this incredibly unlikable character, and within a few scenes, get the audience rooting for him. Get the audience rooting for him to get out of his captivity, escape the cave, and to come out a hero. His character arc feels incredibly believable. His fatal flaw at the beginning of this film is ultimately his ego, and getting kidnapped and held prisoner in this cave completely tears down his ego. It gets rid of his fatal flaw, and it's able to craft a hero out of him. Watching him build the Iron Man suit and build the arc reactor with just a box of scraps in a cave is nothing short of inspiring, and it's also really satisfying watching him build the Iron Man suit. This film kind of makes a little bit of a strange choice with Tony's character after he gets out of the cave. He doesn't really change that much after this point. The film mostly focuses on how the other characters, the side characters, react to the new Tony Stark. They do manage to keep this character interesting by having him obsessively try to right the wrongs of his past. I'm gonna go out on a limb and say that the Iron Man suit actually looks the best in this film here. That is because this is the only MCU movie where the Iron Man suit is an actual physical prop that they put on Robert Downey Jr. And after this point, the Iron Man suit was fully CGI. I mean, yes, in this film, there was CGI used in some shots and to touch up some rough areas, but here I feel like the suit feels more tangible because it is an actual suit that they put on Robert Downey Jr. Now, I don't think the Iron Man suit ever looked terrible, but I feel like after this movie, the Iron Man suit lost a level of tangibility. I miss the Iron Man suit up. Seeing the little parts come together was always just so satisfying. This is something that is unfortunately kind of lost due to the nanotech suits. Also, the comedy here is really well balanced. You know, the little gags in there, sprinkled in there, usually hit, usually really work. The fire extinguisher, for example, never fails to get a laugh out of me. I also think the reason why the comedy works so well in this film is because Robert Downey Jr. just has a natural ability of comedic timing, and I think the writers really use that to their advantage. Now, I hope that this video isn't coming across as me comparing this film to current, more modern MCU movies, and using that comparison as a platform to express my qualms with the current MCU. Now, I feel like that this film really reminded me that these movies actually felt like movies made by humans and not just a factory pumped out machine that made formulaic comic book movies. I feel like that during the first and second acts of this film, it's actually nearly perfect, but it does get a little messy during the third act. My biggest problem with this film is its twist villain. The character of Obadiah Stane always seemed believable as an individual in Tony's life trying to drive him back to his old ways. He is a character who is left rather frustrated that Tony came out of that cave a changed man. So they try to force in this plot twist during the third act, that Obadiah was actually the man behind Tony's kidnapping. This plot twist really just kills the character for me. It reduces this, what was once a pretty believable character, into just being this big, bad, gray villain that Tony has to fight. Now, again, the foundation was there for a pretty solid villain, but I feel like they really just overcomplicated this movie by throwing in this completely forced plot twist. This film actually manages to stick the landing pretty well. Tony revealing his identity to the entire world, and then the film just abruptly ending, just blew my mind when I saw this film when I was like 8 years old. And also they were pretty wise to set up the Avengers during the post-credit scene rather than tacking it on during this film's runtime. I mean, that is kind of the point of a post-credit scene. This film isn't only an excellent opening chapter to a greater cinematic universe, it's just a really well-made film with a rich story and a really solid character arc. Yes, this film drops in quality a little bit during the third act with its twist villain, but other than that, this is one of my favorite entries in the MCU. Overall, Iron Man gets an A-. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed my latest review of Iron Man. And if you did, make sure to give this video a like. And if you want more content like this, hit the subscribe button and ring the bell notification so you can be notified every time I upload a new video. And shout out to Vince Vaughn and the Range Rover. Thanks for watching.